if I wake up from the nap and I need to figure out what happened with the Cowboys press conference or everything out of practice, he is the best news by news Twitter account, in my opinion. And he's Jon Machota from The Athletic here on the Diamond Factory Hotline. Good morning, John. What's up?
I appreciate you guys saying that. That's the whole goal there, you know. A lot of competition out at the start there, just trying to get stuff out as quickly as possible. So thank you for saying that.
Still not as good as Ari Myrov, though. That's the one I go to.
I knew there was no chance that we would get through this interview without Bobby mentioning his name. So.
I love the tricks that John has. He's going to be the one that gets you like the first Cowboys running out of the gates at training camp, right? We're all football stars. I know all his tricks, but I'm too lazy to follow him around on the field and do them. He's the one that's going to get the overhead view of all the fans rushing into AT&T every single Sunday. Those are the things. He knows what the fans eat up, and he delivers on his Twitter account. And yesterday, you were out there with Stephen Jones. Your biggest takeaway from Stephen yesterday was what?
I wouldn't say that there's anything huge that he really revealed. I mean, I asked him about their confidence level and being able to, re-sign that main four with, Trayvon Diggs, CeeDee Lamb, Dak, and Micah Parsons. And, of course, he's going to say that they're confident they can do it. I'm just interested in that whole aspect of it because that's a lot of money. I mean, that's almost half your cap that you could be tying up into four players, and that's fine if all of them play well, but it'll just be an interesting shift because – let's be honest, it's been such a big deal, Dak's contract getting $40 million a year, and now that's turned into one where it's barely even inside the top 10. And now you're going to talk about giving Dak another deal like that. Trayvon Diggs is going to be one of the highest paid corners. CeeDee Lamb, one of the highest paid wide receivers. Then Micah Parsons, I think as long as he keeps doing what he's doing, he'll be the highest paid defensive player. And that's a contract that's in, the mid-30s. So that's why I think Aaron Donald's around $35 million, $32 million, somewhere in there. And that's a lot of cap that's going to be tied up in four players. And if you draft well, then things will be fine. But it's going to be a small margin for error.
Which one, John, do you think will be the easiest to get done, and which one do you think could be the most difficult of those guys?
I think CeeDee Lamb will be the easiest to get done, just because of the fact that I think he's proven that he is one of the top 10 wide receivers in the league. And if you're in that class, I think it's pretty easy to slot where that money will be. And I think that they view him as that. So I don't know, like the whole thing with Dak is he is he's one of those top 10 quarterbacks. And so if you're in that class, then obviously you're the next one up. And it'll just be interesting because of the fact that it just wasn't smooth the last time they got the contract done with him. And so whenever Steven talks about how, it might just be one of these things where we just wake up and it's done. Many of us that cover the team don't believe that because that's not how the last contract went. And so, agents play a role in this. Todd France is not taking deals. Micah Parsons' agent, David Mulugeta, he's not taking any deals. So because of what we've seen from the Cowboys in the past that, they're going to kind of let everything play out. And sometimes that's not in the best move, but because of that, I think probably CeeDee Lamb or Trayvon Diggs. But yeah, one of those two I think would probably be the easiest, and I don't think any of them will be easy.
And there's no issue when you do sign them, all four of them, that you're not going to kill your depth because that is a problem with the salary cap?
I mean, that's totally possible. I mean, I'm trying to think of really a team that I would say maybe the Rams, that the team that they built that won the Super Bowl. They were obviously paying a lot of money to Aaron Donald and, Matthew Stafford and, some of those guys, obviously Jalen Ramsey and that. But I would say, it can be done. You're just going to have to draft really well because you're going to need your draft picks to, be guys that are major contributors that aren't going to be making that top dollar. And so that's fine if you keep having, one really good draft class after another, but you really can't afford to have like that Tristan Hill draft class. Every one of them is going to have to be pretty solid. And if that's the case, which as long as they keep Will McClay around, I do think that's realistic that can happen. But my thing is that there's always injuries, obviously, in the NFL. And if a couple of those guys get hurt, That's a major blow to the rest of the roster because you just have so much money tied up in 3-4 players.
What did you think about their draft class, John, either personally or based upon all the people that you spoke with, including Brugler and anyone else for your work with The Athletic?
Yeah, so as it was going on, it wasn't one that I necessarily loved in the moment. I totally understand all their picks, and they deserve the benefit of the doubt. But I was fine with Mozzie Smith just because of the fact that it's been so long since they put that type of an investment into the defensive tackle position. And I just think with what they've done in the offseason, adding Stephon Gilmore, their defense is just so good. Clearly the best defense on paper since I started covering the team in 2011. So that I get all that, makes total sense. I'm not going to act like I'm an expert, so I do lean on Dane Brugler when it comes to a lot of these prospects. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm just, pouring through all this tape of Luke Schoonmaker, but I just when
you're not Wolchuk, you're not a poser,
right?
Kidding, Zach.
No. But there's so much of that goes on during the draft, and the thing I complain about the most when it comes to everybody jumping in and acting like experts when it comes to those a month before the draft and then during the draft is that really something as small as a character concern or a medical issue completely can wipe you off a board. And so you go from being a guy that, people think, oh, that guy should go in the first round to where, oh, no, we're not interested in the first round or any round. A guy that I always go back to, a perfect example of that would be Ron Leary, who doesn't get drafted at all because they thought, the doctors saw that he had a degenerative knee condition. And so that's a guy that when he was with the Cowboys, he played pretty well, but he goes completely undrafted. And so, we're just watching tape of what they do in college is only maybe half of it, I would say, and maybe that's even too much. And so that's why I these guys like Dane Brugler, he's doing that all year round, and he's talking to people in the know on the medical side with the teams and things like that. And so, Schoonmaker I thought was a little bit early, but then you can easily make the argument, okay, well, he'd probably be gone in the next, maybe 10 picks or something. So what are you going to do there? And you needed another tight end. So I get their reasoning behind it. I just wasn't blown away by that pick. I did like DeMarvion Overshown. I thought, with Dan Quinn as the defensive coordinator, I think he's a good fit for kind of being a chess piece that he can move around and use in a bunch of different ways. And so I thought it was a good, solid draft, like a B-type draft. But, when you have some of these drafts where you get a Micah Parsons, a CeeDee Lamb, a Trayvon Diggs, it sets the bar so high. But I just, it's not a very sexy draft. It's one that when you cover rookie minicamp, no one's really hanging on, how did this player look in practice and things like that. It's just kind of, let's see how everything fits together.
Talking with Jon Machota from The Athletic. John, when you look at what Steven said yesterday about the offensive line, obviously they've continued this best five idiom for the last few weeks. This is the first time I think that Steven has flat out named the best five. When we look at the fact that Matthew Bergeron was in play for them, the guard at 26, there's clearly some fluidity at left guard. What is it? What do you think their plan is there at left guard? How do you think that combination of those five is going to look?
Well, if all five of those players that Steven named can stay healthy, I don't think there's any debate that that's their best five. It's that you don't know how long Tyron Smith will stay healthy. It's Terrence Steele coming back from a knee injury. Obviously, Zach Martin, getting up there in age a little bit. So if you lose any of those five, that's where everything starts to fall apart. And frankly, they should prepare for at least one of those guys not to be there, especially if you're Mike McCarthy, because in your time as Cowboys head coach, you haven't had all of those guys together at any extended period of time. It's always been musical chairs. It's always been trying to find another guy that fits in. And so, they're going to give Chuma Adoga every opportunity to try and win that left guard job. I think they would love for that to happen because of the fact that then you would have three tackles that you could kind of feel really good about. And if Tyron was to go down, well, you still got Terrence Steele and Tyler Smith to play the other, to be your two starters. I think that's what they would prefer. But if it gets to a point where we're going through camp and, let's say Adoga isn't really running away with it. Let's say Josh Ball isn't really doing much that impresses them. TJ Bass, who they signed after the draft. Let's say Austin Richards that they drafted in the 5th round. None of those guys are really making them comfortable. I think there's still a chance that Tyler Smith ends up being your left guard and Tyron Smith ends up being your left tackle and Terrence Steele is the starter at right. But now if one of those guys can win that job, or let's say if they had drafted Matthew Bergeron, I think they would ultimately love to keep Tyler Smith at left tackle and be like, hey, that's where you're going to stay for the next 10 years. But I'm sorry, you just don't go out and make the moves to get Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore to try and play musical chairs on the offensive line. I mean, this team is built to make a deep run and win now. So if with that being the goal, you got to put your best 5 out there. And if Tyron Smith is healthy, well, then you just got to figure it out. And maybe that means Tyler Smith plays left guard.
Cowboys insider Jon Machota joining us here at 105 through the Fan. We have heard a ton of speculation or really kind of wishing, hey, bring Zeke back. Bring Zeke back. What is the likelihood of a Zeke return?
I continue to say I think it's 1%, and I only put it at 1% chance because of Jerry Jones. If Jerry Jones wasn't the owner, I'd say there's no chance, but there's always that small sliver that Jerry could feel like, hey, we are kind of missing that physical runner. I like the story of us possibly bringing him back, and Jerry likes the whole marketing side of Zeke. Obviously, Zeke is a very marketable person in terms of people know about him, the feed me Zeke thing, the jumping in the kettle, Zeke holding out on the contract and Jerry saying Zeke who. I mean, there's just a lot of those things that there's a lot of people that don't know a ton about the Dallas Cowboys that know who Ezekiel Elliott is, and Jerry loves things like that. And I do think that there's a chance that they look at this roster and go, you know what, we are missing that guy that, on 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 in a big game that we just hand the ball to and feel really good about. And so if you're not adding Zeke, maybe it is a Leonard Fournette. Maybe it is they try and make a move for, Dalvin Cook or Derrick Henry if they become available. Now, I would say in any of those cases, it's going to have to be a very team-friendly type deal where that player feels like, hey, I'm the missing piece to kind of put this team over the top. Then maybe that happens. But ultimately, I just think Ezekiel Elliott ends up signing somewhere else. And it might not be until training camp. But if he had played for any other team, let's say he had been with the Jets, I do think that he would be a good fit on a team-friendly deal with the Cowboys. I just don't see Ezekiel Elliott taking a team-friendly deal to return to the Cowboys. I just don't see that.
You think the Cowboys right now are better than last year?
I do. I just think the defense is continuing. The pieces they've added in there, being able to get Dan Quinn to come back, I just think the defense has a chance to be special, to be the best defense in the league. And if you have that, just, the margin for error completely changes on offense. You don't have to be the offense that we've seen from the Cowboys over the last decade where you feel like, well, the offense plays well, then we have a chance to win. I don't think the offense will have to play well all the time with how good I expect this defense to be. And so because of that, I do think it's a better team on paper. And then also I just think that the NFC is just there for the taking. They lost some pieces, but you can look at Philly and losing both their coordinators and Hargrave. I mean, they've had losses. San Francisco, same thing. They don't, you don't really even know for sure what they're going to have at quarterback. And so the NFC is absolutely there for the taking. And so, and I put them right in the mix with those teams.
Is Bobby Belt a Dallas Cowboys homer?
No.
Yeah.
What about a Dak Prescott homer?
It is funny. I would say between him and Hellman, they definitely defend Dak at all costs. Like, this is the thing. Like,
he's great.
I would say this. I think anybody that's around the Cowboys that covers them on a day-to-day basis would say that, even though I guess as reporters you're not supposed to admit these, but I think we're all rooting for Dak. To be honest with you, he's a good dude.
Yeah.
You want to see him have success. And this, when I say this, isn't just he makes time for us and stuff like that. I mean, he's got a genuinely great story. You'd like to see him be successful, and so I think we all kind of we all root for him. We want to see him have that success, and but I would say Hellman and Bobby are probably two of his biggest fans for sure.
In your face, Sean.
Your all-time favorite past Cowboy that you covered?
Oh, that's a good question. That is really good. I'm big on social media, and Des just always provided something. So, there were some times where I'm telling you where Des got real mad at me and really got like screaming at me from the sidelines. Before a preseason game, during a training camp practice, to where I was pretty nervous. I mean, he was pretty fired up about just some stuff I tweeted, which it was accurate, but he didn't like the way I put it out there. But I mean, at the same time, it just he was always so interesting to cover. And I don't know, just like he would always provide you with some content that, let's be honest, when you're on Twitter and stuff like that, it's probably going to get some traction, and it's rarely going to be boring, all the way up until being up at the facility on his last day being there when he drove away. They're just, I didn't get to cover TO, and I'm sure there was a lot of that there. So I would say Dez's entire time with the Cowboys was always very interesting for me to cover.
Incredible work as always at Jon Machota. We now have the ultimate full green light to have you on nonstop. So expect phone calls to bother you at 8:00 all the time. Thank you, and we'll see you soon in person.
Anytime, guys. Thanks for having me on.